Good morning and welcome back to the Up Zone. We are your two hosts, Mr. Elmer Floyd, former House Representative for the 43rd District in the state of North Carolina. I got it. I got it, Floyd. And Tisha S. Waddell, former City Council member for the 3rd District in the city of Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Thank you so much.
I
Thank you.
got it. I don't
I
I
had
don't
to
want your
listen every time to make sure.
I don't want your shine,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay, sir. I just want to make sure, ma'am. That's all. Nothing personal.
Absolutely. Mr. Floyd, before we start our show, I do want to address a very serious topic. Um, we there's not even a delicate way to be able to say this, so I'm just going to inform our audience that you are grieving the loss of your daughter. And Mr. Floyd, I know that because we live in Fayetteville, North Carolina, it does not take long for news to travel. And so we did want to take a moment. And first of all, I want to share this beautiful picture of our beloved Latanya because she is such a beautiful woman. Hang on just a second. Let me figure out how to share. Why? There we go. Now, Mr. Floyd, like I said, because we live in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and word does travel quickly, we wanted to make sure that we do share with our audience that you've experienced a loss. So, is there anything that you would like to say about our beloved Latanya?
Well, Teach, the only thing that I can say is that, you know, this she loved. I mean, the AK, she lived for it. And she loved that. And really, she brought me into the world of technology
She really
because I was,
did.
because I was a paper person,
Listen, and
you know.
Latanya would be the one who would come and get things straight. If you went offline for the podcast, she was coming over to fix it. So I don't. What are we
Yeah.
gonna do without our tech support? I just don't know. Without my friend, who gonna keep you straight, Floyd?
Well, I'm gonna have to get my grandson to come in and give me some assistance. He lives in Charlotte, so I guess he'll be doing it, from a technical standpoint of view. So I will have to get a little bit more technical.
Absolutely. And as is customary, and I think as is befitting, I would like for us to just pause for a moment and have a moment of silent reflection on behalf of your daughter. Now, Mr. Floyd, um, there's no transition that makes this easy. And so, on behalf of me and my family, I do want to tell you that our thoughts and prayers do remain with you and your family. And we will not soon forget my firecracker of a friend. And I will tell anybody who asks me, I know that that woman loved her daddy. And I know that you have been a phenomenal father because as your co-host, I have gotten to see the great deal of care and respect that you give to your family. Mr. Floyd, I would like to mention one other thing while we're having this very, very endearing conversation. I do want to make mention of the fact that I think that this stands to reason why you have been such a strong advocate for men and women who deal with sickle cell disease. And I hope that your advocacy will continue. And I hope that our legislators will take very seriously this disease and that they will put some resources behind the study of this disease. And Mr. Floyd, we stand with you and we bear your grief with you. We love you.
Thank you.
Now, absolutely. Now, today we do have a special guest, and I want everybody to know I did ask Floyd if he wanted to cancel today's show because I would have completely understood that. He indicated that he wanted to move forward with this show, and so we are doing this show because my co-host wants to continue forward, not for any other reason. I did not force you to be here, right? Please let the people know that, Floyd,
You did not.
because they
I
will
most
come for my
definitely.
neck.
I doubt that. I doubt
Okay,
that.
well, I know they will. And Floyd, what's interesting, you were telling me that your phone's been ringing and the people have been calling you. I will say this about our community. We may fight politically and we might not speak when we go to the grocery store and we see each other. But when a calamity hits, we do tend to reach out and just say, I'm thinking about you, how you doing. So the names that you were giving me, I was so pleased to hear that many of those people have reached out to you, because that is an example of the fact that we can love beyond our disagreement. And that's one of the reasons why I think that we are Cumberland County strong. Floyd, what we got going on today? Who coming on our podcast, and what announcements do you have for the people?
Well, very quickly, those who used to gather at KNW for fellowshipping, KNW closed on the 25th of this month. Fayetteville State is going to on April the 25th
Wait,
at
wait, wait.
11
Floyd, they
o'clock.
closed already? They already closed?
Yes, so you was heading that way, they're closed.
I knew they
Yeah.
were closing. I didn't know it was that quick. Go ahead, sir.
And Fayetteville State is on April the 25th is going to have a renaming program on the dormitories, for the founders there. Now, Mo Green, which is the superintendent of public education, is going to have a town hall meeting. Mo Want to Know at Westover High School at 6 p.m. on March the 27th, which I believe is today. And the senior Democrats is having a congressional town hall meeting, and that's going to be on April the 22nd at the VFW between 4 and 6. And if you want to use any federal community, I'm talking about community that the federal government had, you have until May the 7th to get get the real ID if you plan on going on Fort Bragg traveling in the federal facility. And the other thing is that the last announcement is that the county commissioner is going to meet with the Martin Luther King Committee at 5 o'clock on March 31st there, and that's
What
a
they gonna be? What
some.
they gonna be talking about, Floyd?
Well, I know one confusion is one person is under the impression that they had when they got the extension in November of 24. One person was under the impression that the extension was for 26, but the extension in reading and documents that uh, in the minutes it was for 12 months. So I'm sure that that would be a discussion to clarify it, and I'm sure that they're gonna want to know about you know the progress there as it relates to the structure itself, how far along the line. Like the city is waiting for the architect, which is to pass on to the technical review committee to put the project up for bid. So
Right.
that's a discussion that's going to take place Monday. And the other question is, I don't know what, and that's just a gesture. I don't know what the real meaning is, but there is a discussion between 12 and 24 months.
Okay. So the conversation is ongoing about the spire in the MLK Park and the other accoutrements that are to make this space a little bit more high end usage.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, yeah,
they changed the location.
what else we got going on in by way of announcement, sir?
No, that was that was it, and then quite natural. This is just, and we can discuss this at and that was the mayor race is getting to be
A
a
crowded
look
field.
what you might call at the present is a 440
Let me
relay.
tell you something, Mr. Floyd. Somebody trying to call you. Somebody had reached out and sent me some screenshots, because I don't look at stuff unless I feel like it's germane to what we do. Somebody sent me some screenshots of a Fayetteville Observer post for one of the announcements that was made by a candidate, and the comments were so funny to me, Mr. Floyd. They were. I was just sitting thinking, if I were this individual and I were reading these comments, I would question my decision. But I'll tell you, when the announcement was made, I was actually rather intrigued at how they used all of the social elements to their benefit, because they I had not seen anybody announce their candidacy in this fashion since I've been politically connected. So if technology were an indicator, I would say this person would give the other people on the board a run for their money. But based upon the perception that the community has of this person,
What I think that is, I think that it's going to be. You had to look at it, Chief, from my experience and looking at politics in our community. Our community does two things when it comes down to election. It depends on what the other zip code tell 301 and how well they like the person. We don't care whether or not that person is delivered what had taken place while he or she is in office. That doesn't make any difference. You
doesn't
know,
make a bit of difference. Because I'll tell you,
no,
so the incumbent, Mayor Mitch Colvin, has said, until I say I'm not running, assume that I'm running, which I think is so interesting because even from the very first time he ran for office as mayor, he was very aloof in how he went about kind of unfolding that, because at the time he and Devier had been discussing it, and he knew that Devier was going to run, and he just kind of surprised, put it on out there at the 11th hour and ran for mayor. So then each year subsequently, he's sort of not ever given a solid commitment before. He's never tipped his hand before it was time, or tipped his hat, or whatever the saying is. Didn't show us cards. He always sort of waited and then allowed his filing to be his demonstrator as to whether or not he was going to run. What do you think we're going to see? Because Mr. Floyd, one of the things that we're hearing in the rumor mill is that, which is, it's, I had to sit back and think about why would this happen, but we're hearing that the mayor of the city of Fayetteville, Mayor Mitch Colvin, may in fact run for the House. I mean, I'm sorry, for the Senate, for Val Applewhite's seat, Senator Val Applewhite's seat, and that Senator Val Applewhite may actually run for the mayor's position. And I had to ask myself, when this started coming across my desk, I started asking myself, well, why would she do that? What would be the motivation to do that? And then I remembered that she has had the desire to be the first Black female mayor.
well, let me, let me say this, Tish. There's the mayor has a lot of recognition. That's one.
Yes,
And the pay is different between that of a state legislator, and then there's a pecking order in the General Assembly. That pecking order also meaning your seat. There's 50 seats in the Senate. 50 seats. You're leaving and want to assume a Senate seat. You'll be number 50 of the 50 seats. And you have very little of the, you will be in a very little decision making role to influence policies.
right.
So it doesn't make sense. And then you're gonna get less pay with more work. And I just, that's just my thoughts, with that. But however, now, this is a off season election, so Miss
But,
Applewhite can run.
let's talk
I mean,
about what off, like, let's talk about what off season means, because that does mean something. Off season means that if Senator Applewhite decided that she wished to run for this seat, she could do so without having to abandon her Senate seat,
that is correct.
because the
That is
this
correct.
the because the elections don't run concurrent.
Yes.
Now, does that mean that the mayor could in fact still run for his seat, and if elected then turn around and run for the Senate, because they don't run concurrent?
Well, what can
But there's
also
no gentleman's
happen?
agreement in that. There's no agreement in that, because if they're agreeing to take each other's place, because see, this is what would happen if the mayor ran for. Let's break this down, because I had to think through it, Floyd. So help me make sure I'm right. If the mayor decided not to run this cycle. And he just sat it out and prepared himself for a Senate run. And Val decided to come and run for the mayoral seat. If she won, she would have to step down from the Senate in order to take the mayoral position, which would mean there would be a vacancy in the Senate. And who fills vacancies in the Senate?
The Democrat Party.
And the mayor seemingly has a decent relationship with the Democrat Party, which means that he could very likely just be appointed to Val
Yes.
Applewhite's seat without having to actually run for it.
Yes.
Which would then mean
Yes.
that he would have the power of incumbency the next time around when it were time for him to run again. So this, in
But
theory, could work
it could work, but again, it goes back. Why would you want to be number 50
when you're number one.
when you're number? It just doesn't make any sense. But
It
that's
doesn't
what
make any
rumor
sense.
mill has right now. But then again, our community. If you look at Senator Applewhite, how she arose to her position, our community may be listening to Raleigh to give us some guidance on how they want to tell us who to elect, and we're
Absolutely.
good at that. We're good at
Absolutely.
that. I mean,
We're excellent at being told what to do. We do have a guest today. We have House Representative Robert Reeves joining us today. I'd like to go ahead and bring him in, and then we'll introduce him and allow that conversation to unfold. So let's go ahead and bring on House Representative Reeves. Good morning, Mr. Reeves. How are you? Can you hear us, sir? I don't think he can hear us, Mr. Floyd. You want to shoot him a text and let him know that we've got him on live, and I'll go ahead and start introducing him. So this
I think
morning
he might.
we are joined by Robert Reeves II. He is a Democratic member of the North Carolina House of Representatives who represents District 54, which encompasses all of Chatham County and parts of Randolph County. He has served in this role since his initial appointment on January the 29th of 2014. He's a native of Goldston, North Carolina, and attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he earned both his undergraduate and law degrees. During his undergraduate studies, he was the recipient of a scholarship. I don't want to botch the name of the scholarship, but it is a prestigious scholarship. And before entering politics, he practiced law in Durham, North Carolina, focusing on criminal defense and civil litigation. Mr. Reeves was appointed to the North Carolina House in January 2014. We were just talking about appointments, sir, to fill a vacancy and has been reelected multiple times since. In 2010, he was elected by his peers as the House Democratic leader, a position that he continues to hold. Throughout his tenure, Mr. Reeves has sponsored legislation aimed at strengthening public schools and protecting vulnerable populations, the environment, and property rights. Mr. Reeves resides in Chatham County with his wife Cynthia and their two children, and he can be contacted at the state legislative office, and we can provide that information upon the conclusion of our interview. Again, good morning, Mr. Reeves. How are you?
He said he can hear us, but we can't hear him.
We can't hear him.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can hear
All
you,
right.
sir. Yes, sir.
I'm doing good. How y'all doing?
We're doing fantastic. Glad to have you this morning. So, first of all,
Appreciate it.
we want to give you a sincere thank you for joining us. We recognize that you must have a very busy calendar, especially at this time of year when all the legislation is flying around in Raleigh.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
Absolutely. And I'm going to Mr. Floyd is chomping at the bits. He's got some great questions he wants to lead off with. So I'm going to let Mr. Floyd open with our first question.
Okay.
Your daughter is about 18 now,
19.
17, 18, 19. You
Yeah,
might
man.
want to have a little bit more. You might want to have a little bit more conversation with her about technology, sir. Okay.
Doc,
Because
doing all I can, man. It's too many platforms. All I know is Zoom.
you might want to talk with her, man, because that younger generation, have it together. So when you get back in this afternoon, just let her know that I didn't know how to turn the volume up.
I will do
Okay.
it, man.
But how's everything going up there in Raleigh?
Going good. Going good. I can't complain at all.
Well, I was talking to some of my colleagues, and they indicated that on Monday, we used to meet at 7:30 on Monday. They
Yeah,
say that that's changed, and then they were told that you don't vote on Thursday.
right.
So how you gonna get all these bills, you know, uh, through the General Assembly?
Well, I think from your experience up there, even when we had days we were voting, there were days that could have 2 days that could have been made one. And so I think what Speaker Hall's been trying to do is make us a little more efficient. So when we're in there, we're doing something, not just showing up to Raleigh to do one bill.
Well, now, so that means that you're only going to work Tuesday and Wednesday.
Oh, now you know that's not how it works. That those are days we're voting. We got
Yeah.
committee meetings all week. We got everything else going. So nah, they keep us plenty busy, but we only have 2 voting days. So that's been nice.
But let me ask you another question now. Have you gotten the forecast this year as it relates to funding? Are you in a negative or positive forecast? From Rumorville, I know you don't have all of it, at this particular point.
Yeah, well, I mean, the budget's starting in the Senate this year, and I think the word that everybody's getting is that they're being encouraged to look for places where they can make cuts, not encouraged to look for places where they're going to be able to get funding. I think funding is going to be kind of tight. I mean, you got obviously what happened with Western North Carolina, but the other reality is that we've been kind of heading towards a revenue cliff for a while, and that when you don't have the money, you don't have the ability to spend.
Now let's say, as you well know, you got to have a rainy day fund. And right now, I mean, last before the session began, I think y'all had 4.7 billion, and
Yes,
you're giving and you provide Western North Carolina about 1.5 billion, somewhere close to that, given the last funding. So you're gonna have to look at building up that reserve. Maintaining that reserve. So that's going to be a concern also. Do you
absolutely.
think?
Yeah, no, I mean, that if you're going to keep savings, which I think you do have to do, then again, that's going to make some really tough decisions this year about what type of programs are funded.
Mr. Reeves, we saw when the governor announced his proposed budget that it was very, very heavy on education, that there was an emphasis on public safety, and we recognize that he's at a disadvantage during this session because the Republicans have seemingly more support than the Democrats do in the House and the Senate right now. My question to you is, these things are very important, not only to our community and to the state of North Carolina in general, but the nation is seeing really tight budgets around education, and we're seeing some issues with public safety. How do you think that this budget is going to move forward in both the Senate and the House? And what do you think we may see coming out as priorities from the Senate and the House that may be congruent or that may be incongruent with what the governor is requesting?
Well, I think that's a great point that you bring up, and it's really just going to become a what I would call a theory of government at this stage. One of the big problems that we have in North Carolina, growth has been great. We've been able to attract a lot of economic development, but the first thing most of the companies will tell you is that they need a workforce. And so, one of the theories of government that's really been battling at this point is where do you fund education? And the reality is, even with all of the push that we've had towards charter and private schools and, and trying to get people in more diverse forms of education, 80% of the public still goes, of children still go to public schools. And so your question is, do you kind of give in and go ahead and fund public schools, which is what I think we should do for various reasons? Or do you continue to try to push money and try to push students towards charter and private schools? And the problem is there are a limited number of charter and private schools. So even if you're a large charter and private school proponent, they can't educate everybody. And with all the companies that were coming in and the economic development, that's the other problem that you have is that these kids can't fill all of those roles. So to me, we've got to invest in community college. We've got to invest in K through 12, and really got to put real investment in the university system also. I think that you've got some real tensions there, and so I hope that they follow his lead on education. And public safety is really interesting because there are so many varying forms of public safety. But what I like that I saw that Governor Stein did in his budget was a proposal that I've felt strongly about for a while, and it's interesting to watch it finally kind of come to fruition, and that's funding law enforcement. It's one of those things where there are lots of ways that you can tackle issues with safety and law enforcement. And I think one of the ways that you can tackle it is by, the better the pay, the better the job, the better the people that you're able to get to apply for those jobs and really get some opportunities. And so I'd like that idea, and, really trying to make schools safer, which all of us want to do, and really making our communities safer, and not just safer from a crime and justice standpoint, but even from a health standpoint, which has been a real challenge. So I'm hoping they will follow his lead. I would say that my experience has been that, governors' budgets don't necessarily end up being the big push, but I think there are some basics that you've got to do, because here's the thing. Ultimately, our responsibility is to our constituents, and constituents are pretty consistent about what they want. I mean, when it comes down to it, you can fight all these culture wars and do all this other stuff that you want. You see that we're doing a lot of bills now that, are kind of in the culture war state. But the truth of the matter is, folks want to be able to make more money, take care of their families, take care of their kids, be safe, and have a good place to live. And it's on us to provide that. That is our specific job. And so I'm really hoping that is coming through, especially with all the cuts that you can see and come from the federal level. I saw 10,000 more federal employees are going to get laid off today. And,
And it's
we're
so
really in a spot.
absolutely. It's so interesting that you mention the pay rate for law enforcement, and also that you speak to the cultural legislation. And I have two questions in that regard. So, Mr.
Yes.
Floyd and I have talked at length about how our community in particular is affected. We saw our sheriff's department is severely understaffed, particularly as it relates to our jail facility. And so we're looking at this and we're recognizing that for a county of our size, the rate that we are paying our law enforcement officers is not comparable to some smaller counties. They're paying more. And
Right.
so we're hemorrhaging qualified personnel. And that's a huge issue, but it goes back to that budget constraint. And so I guess one of the questions that I'd ask you is, and this is two part, is how are we at the state level seeing our legislators really be responsive to finding the dollars to be able to fill those gaps? And then the second part of the question is, my understanding or experience of the culture conversation, particularly now I'm registered unaffiliated, so
Mm-hmm.
don't shoot me when I ask you this question. But Mr. Floyd and I speak at length about the messaging issue that the Democratic Party is experiencing that is causing the Democratic Party to hemorrhage constituents. And so I'm wondering if there's some conversation going on at a state level with the party that says, we need to get back to those fundamentals that you're speaking about, Mr. Reeves.
Well, and those are actually really good questions, and I appreciate that. One, I think that you do have legislators that are trying to find money. That's one of the things that Governor Stein has also instituted, is to try to work on efficiency. And I can't remember the name of the group that he's put together, but basically to work on efficiency. And again, Representative Floyd knows, just like I know, there's a lot of money in that budget that just gets kind of thrown away and used maybe in the way that's most efficient for people. And so that's one of the things we do. So it's definitely that. I think your second question is an interesting question, because it really, what happens, I think, on a basic level, if we're being frank, is here's where you've got right now is you've got a battle between the have-haves and the rest of us. And so what that means is money. And what money does is money kind of helps you choose the battlefield. So what tends to happen is this: the message that you'll tend to hear that is represented as a Democratic message is a message that is being proposed by the billionaires that are backing, the Republicans at this time. And they have got nothing but money to burn and money to spend. So what they'll do is, for instance, they'll put the three of us on and they'll hear the three of us talk. And so they'll decide, well, Robert sounds crazy. So I'm gonna make sure that everybody hears Robert's message. But I'm not going to do anything for Tisha's message or Elmer's message, because if they do that, then folks are going to think differently. Like I remember a great example was defund the police. Literally, truthfully, not one elected North Carolina state representative or state senator ever uttered those words and ever proposed that. But the next thing you know, we're getting millions of dollars spent on us saying that that's what we're saying. And so therefore that becomes part of messaging. I remember in my own race, doing the same thing. They decide to run a message about a gas bill. And so they're just like, oh, this is what he's saying. And so one, we have a problem with money because we tend to be a working class party. I mean, even though the narrative would be that we've lost the working class in some senses, the truth is the folks that are out here doing stuff for Democrats tend to be people who work every day, holding 1, 2, 3 jobs sometimes. And it ends up having to be a word of mouth message instead of being TV and that type of thing. So to me, it's less of a problem that we have bad messages. It's more of a problem is how do we get those messages out? How do we get the messengers who actually represent 90% of the party to actually be heard? And that's the difficulty. Even though you do have a problem, just like with the Republicans, you've got people on the edges of your party who speak loudest and speak all the time. And the problem is that, especially when you're in the minority, there's no control over that. It's not one of those things where I can come in, if Rep Floyd is, for instance, Speaker of the House, he can come in and say, Robert, I appreciate all those kind of things you're saying. I'm going to need you to stop because that's not helpful to us overall. And he's got sticks that he can use in that case to do it. All we can do is just ask people, hey, let's coalesce behind the message. And it's really, really hard sometimes to get a wide variety of people to coalesce behind the message.
Why is that? Because one of the things, and this is a seriously genuine question,
Yeah,
Representative Reeves. One of the things that perplexes me, because when I was in office, speaking up and speaking out was my hallmark.
right,
Like, to go against the grain, and it cost me a lot. It cost me a lot to do that. But we the people feel like surely there must be something going on. Like even what we saw happen to Representative Floyd, what we saw happen to Senator Deviere from within the party. Why is there not some coagulation of commentary coming from the people that this is happening to, to the us's essentially,
right.
to the ones that you say are the working class? Why is there not some coalescence of messaging from the Democrats that are being mistreated within the party because they truly are trying to work for the people versus trying to work for the platform of those in the party who are on the fringes or who do hold the purse? Where's that disconnect, and why are we seeing that? And if you don't feel comfortable answering that, I understand.
Oh, no, I'm completely
Okay.
comfortable talking about it because it's like with any group. And I think what happens is this: when you're in the minority, nobody knows what works, because if you knew what works, you'd be in the majority. And so what happens is you have well-meaning people who really honestly believe that their message is the right message, their thought is the right thought, because the people they're around are telling them this is what works, and this is what they need to hear. And so what happens is, for instance, I'll use me as an example. I am lucky enough, because of the county I live in, because of the job I have, because of several different factors, I get to hear from a lot of different people. And so I don't I don't tend to be in a bubble, is the nicest way I can put it. And so what happens is I hear people who come talk to me, like, and I would use Representative Floyd as an example. There are things that he talked to me about when I first came in that are still going on now. And the disconnect comes, and I hate to bring everything down to money, but the disconnect comes with money. And so if you're getting, sometimes people equate having a lot of money to having a lot of understanding. And the two of those don't always go together. And so what may happen is you might get somebody like Representative Floyd who says, hey, this is what I'm hearing from my folks back home. But then you may hear somebody who has an opportunity to do the funding and all that kind of thing saying, well, I haven't heard that from many of my people, so I don't believe in doing that. And so you've got a real tension. What has to happen is the folks that are working for working class folks have to actually come together, and that's hard. You know, we talk about it, but it is hard. I mean, I will tell you, just again, if we're speaking frankly, you know, there's certain issues you would think, okay, this is easy. Like,
Right.
you know, the new boogeyman this year is DEI. You would think that affected groups would easily be able to come together on this and say, hey guys, this is bad for all of us. But you don't get that, because what happens is that taking those stands, as you talked about with your tenure at city council, taking those stands sometimes costs you certain opportunities. You know, it's always easier to put your finger up in the air, lick it, test the wind, and see which way everybody's going and be super popular. What's hard is to have a real conversation and say, guys, we're going to have to make some sacrifices in order for this thing to work. And so what I understand is, you know what? If Rep Floyd and I are going to be together on this, then I may have to miss out on something smaller to gain a larger goal. And so what that is, you know, in the legislature, frankly, what that is money. And that goes back through our entire history. There has always been an opportunity for us to singularly be successful. Like, you know, frankly, if I decide just to look out for myself, you know, I could test the wind, I could say all the right things, I could get a little money here, and I could be popular by myself, but I would have to do it at the expense of people that I care about. And what we've got to decide is when we're ready to make that sacrifice. I mean, this is for people that know me personally, they will tell you this is a long, hard, difficult discussion that I have a lot of times, and it's hard. You know, the first thing that you'll hear is somebody say, well, if I do that, then I'm going to make the Republicans mad, and, you know, and I won't be able to do this and I won't be able to do that. And sometimes what we got to recognize is that that's part of the price. And the more of us that stand up like that, the more people that would join on. Like, I think even now, the caucus we have now is a very different caucus than what Representative Floyd left. And I think that's in a good way. But that does not mean that you don't still have some of the same problems. But if we coalesce together and understand none of us are going to solve this, and we've got to be in this together, you know, we can fight like cats and dogs behind the scenes. You know, we can get locked in the room, we can get off air here, and we can fight all we want to. But when we come out, we've got to be unified behind something. And once we unify behind it, that's where we've got to stay. But you're always going to be tempted to take care of yourself. And that is the hard part, I believe, in government. Is people saying, you know what, I know I could be taking care of myself right now, but my obligation is not only to my constituents, but to the greater community that I represent.
Mr. Floyd?
Let me, you know, one thing that we saw in the last election, in fact, you know, in the last two elections, we saw minority candidates. We saw 3, I think it was in 20, run for statewide office. And we saw 3 that ran for, well, you know, a total of a 9 or 10. And we saw 3 again that the, as you know, when the PAC was formed, the Council of State PAC,
Right.
Okay, to help fund Council of State candidates, and we saw $40 million poured into that, and we came out and we saw 29 million went to one person, not accusing now, okay,
Right.
and we saw 3 person got $0 out of that money. And that's what our party got to start doing, is looking at races and begin to provide some assistance. Now, what I mean by that, if funding was given to those 3 candidates or some assistance, okay, maybe the state board of election would not have been put in the auditor office, because that person lost by about 2%, less than 5, way less than 5%.
Right.
Okay. So if money was given to that person, just a little bit of money, $1 million of that $40 million will help that person do a statewide election. That's what we got to start looking at as a party. Or the minority gonna have to start looking at funding their own PAC, establish their own PAC, is to help minority candidates.
And I actually think that's a fair point. and what I would respond with is this: is that we got to remember with that leadership pack, it's not affiliated with the state party. It's not affiliated with anybody. This is a group of funding that, their job, frankly, is to look out for their candidates. And if they happen to help anybody else, that's great. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying it's kind of like a business. If my business is to make sure that I keep the two of you paid, then if I'm able to help somebody else, great. But if not, not. And I would use myself as an example. So, and just as Representative Floyd, in my race in 22, they redrew my district. I went from a pretty heavily Democratic district to suddenly, I had a 1-point Biden district, and I didn't get any help. And I'm not saying that negatively, but I'm just saying that's the reality. I was leader of the caucus at that point. It would not be seemly for me to get help from the party or from the caucus. So I had to go out here and raise money. The folks that probably could have funded or could have supported my race weren't there. And so what I made the decision to do is I'll go out here and get it myself. It's out here. But again, it requires us coalescing. I would promise you that if you sat and you looked at fundraising and you looked at people who give money and things of that sort, there would be people that in your mind, Representative Floyd, should have given as much to those minority candidates as they did to that leadership pack. But they decided themselves that was something they weren't going to do, but we got to go out there and get it. I mean, that's just what it is. We're not lucky enough that we've got, these billionaires who will just sit there and fund. I mean, you got a couple of billionaires in North Carolina, and the Republican Party is able to say, hey, we need $3 million. It happens. We've got to go out there and get it. And that's twofold. One, we've got to get it. Two, we've got to get people in a mindset that these races matter. And the way you do that, in my mind, especially with minority candidates, we've got to be very supportive of our minority candidates vocally. Like we've got to work. One of my friends used to always say that with politics, it's about your wealth, your work, or your wisdom. You got to be able to give one of those three. And I am telling you, you can get minority candidates elected if minorities are behind those candidates, if their groups get behind those candidates. I'll give you a great example that happened in Cary. We had a young lady run who I'm actually good friends with that ran as an independent in a, Democratic election. She had connections to both sides, things of that sort. Her community got her elected. Just that simple. They didn't depend on all of the traditional methods. They didn't depend on the folks who would normally fund races and carry. But her minority community said, we do not have representation on this council, and we're going to have it. And so they were working polls. They were knocking doors. They were getting it out by word of mouth. They were drawing from people all over Wake County to make that happen. We've got to start making those kind of efforts if we don't feel we're getting the support we deserve. And until we muscle our way into those rooms, we're going to stay out of those rooms. And it happens.
Well, right now, Representative, if we look at the makeup of the House caucus, okay, if we look at the makeup of the House caucus, there's more minorities in the House caucus than they are the, if you want to, we refer to it in our community, the other zip code. Okay, that's what we do. We have a 301 zip code. When we look at the other zip code, we say the other community zip code. But that's that's one of the problems. Just like you just mentioned, in my 12 years in the General Assembly, I got $98, and it caused me to go back and do 3 campaign reports. I would have given the party $98 than to go back and pay my daughter to not pay her, to have her to amend 3 reports to get $98. So in 12 years of service, the party gave me $98. So how can you expect for me to follow your suggestions and recommendations to be strongly with the party when you never give me any assistance?
Well, Rep, you got $98 more than I've gotten in my 10 years. So,
what? Now, come on, Representative.
Doc, you can go back and look. I'm telling you, I have funded all of my own races. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. What I'm saying is, what I can frankly say is this, is that to put it in the terms that you're saying, and I'll put it in different terms. I think we fall into race a lot, and race is an easy divider. I would put it in terms like this. Suppose we've got 55% of the caucus are UNC fans, UNC Chapel Hill. We all love UNC Chapel Hill, okay? But that 55% won't support things that help UNC Chapel Hill. Well, then it becomes a chicken and egg. If the 55% that allegedly love UNC Chapel Hill spend all of their time trying to figure out how to help state and come up with excuses not to help UNC Chapel Hill, then how do you convince those other fans that we're a good group to push in behind? And what I mean is this: we have power. If you have a majority of a caucus, for instance, you have the ability to help form an agenda. But we've got to get behind that agenda. It cannot be a circumstance where we're just like, well, somebody else has got to fix that for us. We've got the ability to do it ourselves. And when we do that, those are the kind of things that I do think help you get funded in these races. Because I think then people have to listen to you, because you do help determine what is going to be pushed. But that requires us to be in behind each other. And again, I will give you credit, and I always will. I do it privately, and I'm happy to do it publicly. You gave me the exact same amount of support the day I got in there as I did as you gave me when I was deputy, and what you gave me when I was leader. And what I mean about that is that then allows me to go and say, when you do something that hurts me, you got to deal with me and Elmer now. And then if Tisha comes in and I'm able to say, okay, you do something that's wrong by me, now you got to deal with me and Elmer and Tisha. Then that's how you build power, when you don't always have the money that the other folks have. But if Tisha comes in and you and I are working good, and Tisha's like, hey, y'all, I'll take Elmer and Robert out if you can help me out with get me a little money for Fayetteville State. I mean, then we're back where we started from. So that's my thing, is that, trust me, I understand and appreciate your frustrations in that sense. But I am a strong believer that if folks that have common concerns and common fears, going back to what Tisha was asking about, if those folks understand that whatever our differences are, we may disagree on some political issues or whatever it is, but we've got these overarching things we've got to stick together on. If we can do that.
Don't you be out here making me the bad guy, Mr. Reeves. I have enough people trying to make me the bad guy.
I ain't never gonna do that to you, Tisha. I can't beat up on my man over here, so I got to beat up on somebody. You know how it goes.
Mr. Reeves, I think that it's so important for us to always provide opportunities for our constituency, our listeners, to be able to hear from various perspectives. I want you in these last few minutes to kind of wrap up and summarize what's important to you, what you're pushing for not just your constituency, but for the state of North Carolina, and how they can best support you in that. Because I think sometimes what we forget is that if you have the power, and you brought this up, and I love that you mentioned it about the independent candidate. If you have the power of the people behind you, you really don't need the purse. And so there has to be an opportunity to get the power of the people behind you. So what's going on? What's important? And how can they help you?
You said that so much better than me. I'm gonna hire you, but
you can.
But what I would say is this: what has become so important to me is for everybody to have the opportunity I have, and especially people who have not normally been in the rooms to have those opportunities. I got where I am because an entire community got in behind me and made it happen. I have never forgotten when I got that scholarship. I got that scholarship because I was up for a Moorhead scholarship, and a man named Herb Davis showed up at my high school. He was a small, unassuming man. He's sitting there. My counselor was just like, well, this guy from UNC wants to talk to you. And Herb said, I know you didn't get the Moorhead, but you almost got it. Very impressed with what you've done. Do you want to still come to Carolina? I said, yes, sir. I had no idea how I was going to get to Carolina. My parents, were, I was the first generation to be able to go to a integrated school, K through 12. So my thing was, yes, sir, I did. And Herb made sure I got there. And I'll never forget that. And so my point is, we ought to make sure that every single person within the borders of this state has the opportunity. We all want different things, but they should have the opportunity to be who they want to be. And so my thing is, you can't afford houses. Well, there's two ways we can do that. We can help reduce material prices, or we can raise your wages. And if we raise the wage floor, if we raise the standard of living, those are the kind of things that help a community. I want to see the standard of living for the average person in this state to be so good that folks are coming from other states, not just because, but because they're just like, whoever I am, I can get to North Carolina and I can make it. That is what I'm aiming for. So that means we got to have a great education system. We got to have great community college. We got to have great pathways that are offered once these companies, and you've got to get good companies that want to come in here and hire a lot of different people, understanding that different perspectives only adds to what they've got. We got to have great health care. Minorities suffer about health care more than anybody else. We got to make sure that everybody's got economic opportunity. If you want to be a painter, I want you to be the best painter in the world. If you want to be an entrepreneur that makes millions, that's great. If you want to teach, I want you to be able to teach, to give back to your community and not have to take 3 different jobs. So the short version is, I feel that what I care about is what most people here care about. We want to be able to live our lives, love our families, be safe, be left alone. And I am happy to help us do that, but we have got to come together to be able to do that, because I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with billionaires. So if there's some billionaire listening right now, I'm not saying all billionaires are bad, but it is rare that somebody with $1 billion is going to be trying to figure out how to help pull you out of tough financial circumstances that are no fault of your own. So we want to be there for it.
Mr. Floyd, final thoughts?
Well, one thing that you mentioned, and we talked about it prior to you coming on, and that was, we have about 240 or 250,000 North Carolinians that suffer from sickle cell.
Yes.
And I would like, in fact, my daughter just passed, and she was a sickle cell person.
Mm-hmm.
More money from and the caucus can do it, put in there to study and find more cure that people can afford the care. Right now, as you know, health care is not, those persons who are receiving health care, and those persons who are sickle cell are, they are worried today whether or not,
Yep.
they will continue to receive medical services there. So I wish that there was something going for. I know it's a difficult year, and that some kind of legislation be passed, to do more research in that area. That's just my thoughts. But in closing, sir, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you allowed me to train you when you first came to
Absolutely.
and I can see, as a person, as a teacher, when you go back and look at your students, you become proud.
Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me, man.
Because Teach don't believe that I had a relationship in helping prepare you for what you are facing today.
Y'all gonna stop making me the bad guy today.
Hey, well, I'm telling you, I'm here to say it out loud. That man, every step of the way, and I'm telling you, he did things for me he never got credit for, never got talked about, but I'll never forget, and I will appreciate, and I want to pass that on to guys that are coming in now.
Yes.
And so I try to follow your footsteps in that way.
Yes.
Well, thank you, sir.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Y'all take care.
You too. Enjoy your day.
All right, then. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Mr. Floyd, it's always such a pleasure to be joined by a guest who is willing to come on and be transparent and be straight up with us. And I do appreciate Representative Reeves for that. And I will be sending him my information and the information in regards to my business, so that should he choose to hire me, he has the opportunity to do so. Mr. Floyd, listen, we talked a little bit before we had our guest about the mayoral announcements. One of the things that I think we should definitely um not gloss over is, even in his bio, we see that Representative Reeves was appointed and has continued to serve by being reelected. So, should this be what's brewing in the background, we can see how this may work and how it may all play out. And I need for y'all to remember that we give y'all information before mainstream media regularly. So, when you hear this stuff coming up, like we started telling y'all a year ago that Mario Benavente was going to run for mayor. In fact, we told y'all so much that when the Fayetteville Observer wrote their article, I'm sorry, when City View Today wrote their article, they indicated that it was one of the best, worst kept secrets. Because we've been reporting on this for the better part of a year now, that this was going to be coming down the pipeline. And we told you why we suspected that, because it was already suspected that he was not living in the district, and that once he got married, he would no longer be able to pretend, allegedly, that he was living in the district. And so he would have to make a different move. So here we see the different move. Mr. Floyd, do you see Kathy Jensen as a viable candidate for mayor?
The greater the number, the greater the number, the greater the divide.
Okay.
Okay, the greater the number, the greater the divide,
Yeah, I
and so
understand.
that's what you have to look at. That's what you have to look at going there, because when you look at the makeup of the community, a little over 43% of this community. Uh, I know they don't live all in 301, but they live. I'm just gonna say a 301 relationship. So
So
if
when
the
you have a
mayor
when you go ahead.
now if the mayor opt to that 301 zip code, as I said to you earlier, T, it depends on who from the other zip code tell our community who
Who to
they
vote
want
for?
to be. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Tish. I mean, that's how I work. We don't care if you don't deliver nothing, not nothing. And if we like you, we want you to serve us to get nothing.
Well, Mr. Floyd, one of the I want to talk about somebody who has delivered and who I was so excited to see this announcement. We have an interim police chief for the city of Fayetteville has been named, and it is Assistant Police Chief Todd Joyce. Todd Joyce actually has been very deeply ingrained in the 301 community, even though he's not the hue of what the 301 community is typically associated with. He is definitely the character and the substance of this community. And so I was so excited to see him announced, because he is a hard worker who has consistently delivered. Now, Floyd, I'm going to tell you this. I don't know who is going to be our next police chief. I don't know if interim means you on the way to being the police chief, but I will emphatically, without a beyond a shadow of a doubt, say that I feel like our community is in good hands under the leadership of Assistant Police Chief as the interim police chief, Todd Joyce. I just wanted to congratulate him publicly and put that on the table. Yes, sir.
Now, as the non-official city manager, you know, I, I, I would want, I would look at that and ask the interim chief, if you want or if you apply for this position, how long would your lifespan be? Because I reached a point. This is getting a real. This is
Cause
getting old.
we tired of one and two and done. Yeah.
Yeah, we're tired. We are tired of going through this process, and it causing us money. So, what would be your commitment of that? And you're right; is a good person, but I think that what the manager ought to look at the commitment there. Maybe you want maybe you might want to look at the chief as a athletic director or a football coach. Is that you get a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year
Well, I think you
agreement.
also have to, but you also have to look very holistically at the leadership of the Fayetteville City Council, because Mr. Floyd, like I'm gonna tell you, one of the comments underneath the article that I read, that was sent to me, indicated that some people are very concerned that under the leadership of one of the candidates that the police department would absolutely be destroyed, that we would see a mass exodus of law enforcement officers. Wait, what you say?
I'm not even, you know, I'm telling you, I do not believe and will not look at someone or a person. I'm just summarizing this, Miss Waddell,
Hmm.
who's saying, and I'm using the word now, defund the police. I live in
Absolutely.
301. I live,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna explain this to you very clear so you can, as we exit now, I live in 301. And if any community need a relationship and police service, it's 301 because I want to lock my doors. I want to walk the street at night, you know, and I don't want to hear loud music 24 hours.
Absolutely.
So I'm not going to be the one that say anything about reducing police when they're already 78 officers short and the sheriff
Period.
department 190, 107, 190. No, 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 no.
Period.
That's
Mr.
not.
Floyd, I agree with you. I completely and wholeheartedly agree. So I think we need to look holistically at who we're appointing as our next police chief. I think we also need to look holistically at our leadership to see why we keep hemorrhaging um, effective leadership from the top down. Mr. Floyd, quick question. Have we heard any updates about this 30-day review for the Civic Center?
Well, if you look at it, Tish, I mean, what they're saying is that number one, they're looking at already invoice. Okay. And it could be that when the invoice, I mean, when it was first given to them, they received a 10-year-old estimate.
Mm-hmm.
And when the contractor came back, you know, they said, we now today, I'm giving you the update with the price change. Now it's $32 million more. So they said, all right, let's go back and redraw. So there's another invoice. So you have invoice A and then you have invoice B. So it may be a comparison of A and B to see whether or not, we have been getting what we paid for
Yeah.
and whether or not that facility would be built on that site. When you look at 145 and 30, which is 175, you can go out there and build a whole, you know, and help grow the community
Yeah.
than to put it in the crowded space over there and spend a $30 million for a parking deck. But if they build a parking deck, again, as we exit,
It
T,
will have an
I,
elevator. I don't know.
I
Fingers
pray that
crossed.
they have
Fingers
it.
crossed.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Floyd, what you want to leave our audience with?
Same thing I always say, T. If a dog bring a bone, he
A
truly will
dog will
carry one.
carry one. Absolutely. And I want to say, in light of what we talked about at the top of the program, I'm grateful to be in a community where we can put our grievances aside and our disagreements to the side and come together to support those we love as they mourn. So let's remember to rejoice with those that rejoice and to grieve with those who grieve. And let's remember to keep each other covered in prayer in the name of Jesus by the power of the Holy Spirit, because that truly is what will sustain us and cover us and keep us and carry us. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and follow. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And listen, we don't mean nobody no harm. So if you're mad about anything we talked about, all you got to do is reach out and tell us, and we will absolutely be certain to I mean, we might not do anything, but we'll reassure you that we don't mean any harm about anything
I
we're
won't
talking
run away.
about. Right,
I
right.
will not
We'll
run away.
definitely take your call. Don't email me, don't text me, just call me because I want you to be able to hear my heart when I talk to you. Because I love all y'all. Even if I don't like you, I still love you. And on that note, we'll catch you on the next episode. We're clear, sir. Have a wonderful day.
Okay.